just as things were slowing down and the list of available 5-stars was down to just 3, the #1 edge rusher reopening his recruitment. Elijah Rushing decommitted from Arizona. What it means for the Wildcats, an early crystal ball, and who's in play to land him. We tackle all of it. Plus, the Dogs, they're used to being on top. They're #1 in the nation and #1 in the 2024 class. More of the same next cycle? We discuss. And they may be college football rookies, but freshmen across the country are making an impact early. Chris Hummer joins us to break down the top newcomers. All that and more as the College Football Recruiting Show starts right now. Alongside Blair and Gulo, I'm Emily Proud. Submit your questions in the chat. It's already lively discussion in there. The only way you can see it is by subscribing to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Also, please like this video so we know that you're watching. Time to hit some headlines, and boy, we start with a big one. 4-star wide receiver Nye Carr announced his commitment to Miami. That was Sunday night. He backed off a Georgia commitment last month, and somehow watching the Canes play this weekend did it for him. Blair, Mario Cristobal needed this win in more ways than one.
Yeah, he's a dynamic route runner with great burst and agility. He can be an impact weapon for the Hurricanes next season.
All right, you watched it go down right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel, a.k.a. #CommitHQ. The #4 ranked JUCO player in the country committed to Oregon. That's corner Sione Lalea picking the Ducks over Miami and USC. Who did Dan Lanning just add on defense?
A player that can really immediately help them. He's got really good ball skills, the awareness to track the football, and when they're moving over to the Big Ten and to beat out a school like USC and Miami, it's a huge win for Dan Lanning.
That is a big deal. Another player off the board, this in 2025, that's 3-star wide receiver Javon Boggs, locked into Ohio State. And Blair, when you're a star wide receiver in the state of Florida, it's just what you do. What kind of talent does Boggs bring to the Buckeyes?
Another big weapon headed to zone 6 and playing for Brian Hartline. A high-volume zone beater, as our own Andrew Ivins likes to call him. He can attack defenses with his smarts and his route running.
A zone beater. I like the sounds of that. All right, the bombshell from yesterday, the #1 edge in the country, Elijah Rushing, is back on the market after decommitting from Arizona. Blair, you broke this news. Tell us what happened here.
It has to do with development. I think the family and Elijah Rushing felt like he needed to reopen things up and reassess every option. Maybe he may be committed a bit too early in the summer, but Arizona's still trying there. There's going to be a number of other schools vying for the #1 edge rusher in the country.
You can read his full statement on X. We had a huge celebration on this show when he committed to the hometown school back in July. He was the highest ranked commitment in Arizona history. So where does this now leave Jedd Fisch?
Yeah, Arizona now has to go back to the drawing board and trying to pick up the pieces, because this was the player that they were building this recruiting class around. Even a player like Damon Williams, the 4-star quarterback from within the state, also followed and announced his commitment to the Wildcats. So I think for them, it's about continuing to evaluate other players at that position, making sure that they are crossing all their boxes as well. They're making sure that they're figuring out who could be potentially filling that spot that they had for Elijah Rushing. And then I think it has to go back to the transfer portal for them. They have to go in and get immediate impact type of players. We always talk about those 5-stars being able to step on the field right away. I know we're going to break some of those down with Chris Hummer later on in the show, but this is a team now that is taking those steps on the field, and they're going to have to go get some immediate impact players that could fill what Elijah Rushing was going to bring.
As for what is next for Elijah Rushing, let's bring in Steve Wiltfong, our Director of Recruiting for the Wiltfong Whip Around. Steve, you were all over this Elijah Rushing story, and now you and Blair have crystal balls in for Oregon to land the 5-star pass rusher. I want to hear from both of you on this, but first, Steve, what can you tell us about this ongoing situation?
Yeah, Blair and I have been working this story together, and Oregon has never gone away on Elijah Rushing. When he committed to Arizona, I don't think anyone in Eugene thought that this one was dead because of a number of reasons. Great relationship with the staff, a staff that has championship pedigree. When you're talking about head coach Dan Lanning, defensive coordinator Tosh Lupoy, those guys have been part of some of the best defenses and best football teams in college football, and that's attractive to Elijah Rushing and his family. Elijah's always felt at home in Eugene during several visits, and when he committed to Arizona, that one was very close down the stretch, and Oregon gave him a lot to think about there, and then obviously continue to do so. They're having a great start to the season this fall, going into the big game against Washington this week. And what Oregon potentially provides Elijah is an opportunity to practice against great players, moving to a conference where you're going to get a chance to play against great players and to be coached by great coaches. I think those are some things that have Oregon trending right now, coming off his decommitment from Arizona.
A strong comfort level as well, Steve. He's been to Eugene a number of times. His brother Cruz, who's actually on the football team at Arizona, was a former preferred walk-on for the Ducks. So that family has a long-standing relationship with the staff in Eugene. Tosh Lupoy, the defensive coordinator, was on the sideline on Friday night at South Point Catholic to check out Elijah Rushing as South Point improved to 6-0. And then the relationship with not only Dan Lanning, who's a defensive-minded head coach, as well as Tony Tuioti are really giving, I think, Oregon a notch up right now early on in the battle as things open up again. But I'm expecting other schools to be involved as well. The Washingtons, right? The Tennessees, UCLAs, schools like that maybe missed out on Elijah Rushing the first time around. They have some new life in this recruiting battle. They can go back in there and try to feel things out and figure out, okay, how much room do we have to make up? But right now, I do like the Ducks.
Yeah, Steve, along those lines, you go back to the recruitment before he committed to Arizona, and you've got finalists Blair mentioned, Notre Dame, Oregon, Tennessee, UCLA. What are you hearing in terms of other schools outside of the Ducks?
Well, all my intel is heavy towards Oregon right now for Elijah Rushing. I think when it was leading up behind the scenes of knowing that he could potentially reopen his process, it was Oregon being one of the big reasons why, and what the Ducks have been able to do and how they've been able to continue recruiting Elijah. That's a very attractive option. And I think it's up to those other programs now to show that they could potentially have a better situation than the one that Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoy, Coach Tuioti and Oregon have right now. Because, again, he loves Oregon. He loves being up there on the campus. The family trusts the potential development that he would have with their track records at other schools and what they're currently doing at Oregon. So the bar is high for the Ducks for Elijah Rushing right now.
All right, speaking of the Ducks, they are now a top 10 team in the AP poll, but just outside in the recruiting rankings. Rushing would certainly help that. But who are some other prospects, Steve, that the Ducks are in prime position for right now?
Well, Oregon's going to be one of the more fun teams to follow on the trail as this 2024 cycle comes to the finish line here. They're in on another five-star defensive lineman, Aiden Breland, who's going to announce his college decision on Saturday, perhaps on the 24/7 Sports Network. Working on that behind the scenes right now. But I like, the buzz, as we talked about last Thursday's show, still here on Monday. I like the way it's pointing towards Oregon right now, but Georgia and Miami certainly not going to go away for Aiden Breland. And there have been times where I've liked those other two schools for him in a recruitment that's had some ebbs and flows, but Oregon seems to be hot with Aiden Breland. Jericho Johnson is one of the best defensive line recruits in the country, certainly one of the best out west. I think Oregon has set the bar with him after having him on campus for the win over Colorado. They still have the they still have the official visit down the road in play for Jericho. Now, USC is the other program I'm watching. It's his dream school. The family has always loved the Trojans. But I think they got to make up ground on Oregon, as does Washington and Utah. But we like Oregon for top 247 running back Jason Brown. Brandon Huffman and I have 24/7 Sports crystal balls in favor of the Ducks for Jason Brown. And then you have tight end Roger Saliapaga, who I also like Oregon for, from the state of Utah, as they try and hold off some SEC programs for him. So Oregon with a chance to really close with a bang here, as the early signing period's coming fast. Won't be long till we are doing a wall-to-wall coverage on the early signing period. And there's a chance we're talking a lot about Oregon with who they have still out there right now.
Yeah, we can go back to the visions from last year, right? With Dan Lanning and his cigar, just, enjoying the day, the big day that the Oregon had. Steve, Oklahoma had a big day on Saturday. It really drew the attention of the nation by beating Texas in that Red River rivalry out at the Cotton Bowl. And they did so by playing well in the trenches. That's an area that they're emphasizing on the recruiting trail. What can you tell us about their chase to solidify the offensive line in the future?
Yeah, well, Bill Bedenbaugh is, if he's not the best offensive line coach in college football, there's only like one or two peers that he has. Sharon Moore at Michigan comes to mind. But again, there's not many. Bill Bedenbaugh is one of the best, expecting to have 3 more draft picks on the offensive line following the season, and then another potential free agent. So four pros potentially up front for Oklahoma right now, as they were able to beat Texas in the latest chapter of Red River rivalry, and they're in on a couple big-time offensive line recruits moving forward. Daniel Akinkunmi from the NFL Academy in England is going to announce his college decision this week. And Oklahoma, the heavy favorite coming in. He took his official visit the opening week of the season for the win over Arkansas State. He said the fan base is amazing, the history of developing offensive linemen and the culture. Bill Bedenbaugh's got a lot of guys in the NFL on the offensive line. I think Oklahoma is clearly the one to beat there. Grant Bricks, top 247 offensive lineman, is one of their top remaining targets regardless of position. And Oklahoma, led by Coach Bedenbaugh, has been pushing extremely hard here. I think that distance could be tough for them. Nebraska's their competition. There's a lot of people that think Nebraska may have the edge, and it's because of distance. Now, certainly Coach Rule and company have a lot of promising things going on in Lincoln that Bricks and his family like. But I think if all things were even and these two programs were the same distance from his house, I would put Oklahoma in the driver's seat. And he is still thinking strongly about going to Oklahoma. So that was one that I thought was going to wrap up before the season, but it's been so tough for him to make the call. It's still ongoing, and Oklahoma's pushing extremely hard there.
All right. Usually this is where I chime in and say less than half of you watching have hit the like button, but that would be a lie. It's like a fifth of you have hit the like button. So get it up. Listen to Steve Wiltfong. He's going to withhold all the great information if you don't hit that like button. I've learned, Steve, that threats actually really work on this show, so I'm going to keep trying to do a little bit of that. The Sooners are still partying right now, still very excited about that win, so let's keep talking about them. You logged a pair of crystal balls for Venables and his staff to land 3-star offensive lineman Eddie Pierre-Louis and 3-star Michael Boganowski. So what has you leaning Oklahoma with these two?
Well, Oklahoma, another program, they had a top 5 recruiting class last year, pushing for another top 10 haul this year in year 2 of the Venables era. Michael Boganowski, he just announced today that he's going to announce his college decision a week from Thursday. I think that might be on the 24/7 Sports recruiting show. So again, hit those likes and subscribe so you don't miss out on the big commitments going on out there. But talked to Boganowski's dad this week, and he talked about Oklahoma. It's a spot where they're going to make sure your child is well taken care of. They're going to continue to push him, make a better man, better football player. And then talking to the younger Boganowski, he's talked about the opportunity to play in Coach Venables' defense, them moving to the SEC, the Soul Mission program that they have. Those are all things that I think have put Oklahoma in the driver's seat as they try and beat Kansas and Kansas State, among others. And then Eddie Pierre-Louis, we talked about Bricks, we talked about Akinkunmi. Oklahoma has had Eddie Pierre-Louis as high on the board as anybody this cycle out of Tampa, Florida there. This is a guy that has ambitions of playing football at the highest level, and Coach Bill Bedenbaugh's track record, I think, is what has Oklahoma in the best position. Now, Oregon's been trying hard to get Eddie to campus, but until they're able to do that, I really like Oklahoma. UCF's certainly going to make another pitch, but the buzz is the vibes, all Oklahoma right now for him as well.
Another team that had a big weekend on the field this past weekend was Louisville. Steve, a double-digit upset over Notre Dame at home, and you had a chance to catch up with a number of players that made it down to Flyville. What was the reaction to what they saw on Saturday night?
Second half was a bloodbath. Louisville dominated a top 10 Irish team. Couldn't have picked a better weekend to do it. The stars were out. It was a star-studded recruiting section that got to see a phenomenal atmosphere, a place that was filled with a ton of energy. And then they stormed the field and talked to some coaches, some personnel people. They said they looked around. There was like 30, 40 recruits. on the field, just soaking in that pandemonium there. Louisville's 6-0. You know, you talk to some of the recruits, everything that's been said about Coach Brom and the coaching staff has been laid out there tonight right in front of their eyes. You know, under Coach Brom, we know our potential, and we know we can go as far as possible. This is a program that's got championship aspirations. There's no pro football team in Louisville. The town is invested. The donors are invested. You saw the fan base. This is a team that wants to go to the next level. They think Coach Brom's the one to be able to do that, and there were a lot of blue chippers there, led by quarterback Husan Longstreet out of California there that loved it and said that Louisville's one of his front runners among his 30 offers. So this may also help Louisville get back in it with some recruits that maybe they lost out on earlier in the 2024 cycle. I know that Coach Brom and company are making some phone calls saying, are you sure? You seeing what's happening here? They're going to Pitt, trying to be 7-0 this weekend. But Louisville, man, they are a team to watch in the ACC. Big win over a Notre Dame team that had been playing well.
We always talk about what these first-year staffs need to do to help on the trail. And we always say, just show improvement, show something on the field. I think 6-0 is a pretty good start to the Brom era. And we're only talking about winners on this show, so let's talk Florida State. When it comes to Mike Norvell's continued pursuit of 4-star defensive lineman L.J. McCray and 3-star linebacker and Georgia Tech commit Jordan Boyd, what's the latest here?
Yeah, and maybe soon to be 5-star defensive lineman L.J. McCray. Be locked in for Andrew Ivins and the recruiting team's updated rankings on 24/7 Sports this week. He's a stock-up guy after Ivins has seen him. Easy to see why Florida State loves him so much. He's having a phenomenal senior year. And he was at Florida State's opening win over LSU, back this weekend for the win over Virginia Tech. He told me that he liked it, just another chance to get the tally. His favorite things about Florida State are the staff and the culture. Florida State trying to make a move on Georgia. Florida's another program that's always been near the top of his list, with Miami and Florida State being two, trying to rally alongside Auburn. Not sure quite yet if those other three programs have been able to catch the perceived front runners, in my opinion, of Georgia and Florida, but certainly LJ's liked what he's seen from Florida State this year. Loves Coach Odell Haggins, loves the culture, and loves what Coach Norvell's doing there. And then Jordan Boyd is committed to Georgia Tech right now. I think Florida State's going to get him back not once, but 2 more times. He's going to be back for the Miami game. Going to take an official visit before the Shrine Bowl in the Battle of the Carolinas. He was there with his dad, there with a couple high school coaches. Certainly a lot of intrigue with Florida State right now with Jordan Boyd, and we'll see if Florida State ratchets it up for him as the season continues, but they're certainly in the middle of that one as well.
Steve, we lied to you. I think we also have to talk about a loser in Missouri. Even though they lost, they continue to impress some big-time targets. 5-star wide receiver Ryan Wingo, as well as Ohio State commit Jeremiah McClellan. What did those two have to say about their time on campus?
Well, holistically, Mizzou's winning, right? They got one of the best offenses in the country. Luther Burden is the nation's leading receiver out of St. Louis. And for him to continue to put on the show, have another big game like he did in front of Ryan Wingo, in front of Jeremiah McClellan. Those are two guys from St. Louis. Now, this was Ryan Wingo's second time watching Missouri play this year. He was at the Memphis game earlier this fall, 10 minutes down the road when they played in St. Louis. And he knew that Missouri was going to have a good year, likes their OC, loves Coach Peeler, the receivers coach. He talked about his track record of developing DK Metcalf and A.J. Brown at Ole Miss, talked about Kirby Moore and that offense. Certainly Coach Drinkwitz is involved. And that's another program. We talked about Louisville and the investment of the community right now in the Cardinals. Same with Mizzou. Now, there's a lot of backing to that program right now, and Ryan Wingo and Jeremiah McClellan are two of the most coveted targets still on the board for them. Now, with Jeremiah McClellan, he's committed to Ohio State. It's tough to flip a receiver from the Buckeyes. While there are some people in Columbia that think that they have a chance to ultimately flip Jeremiah McClellan, I'm not ready to put him on spatula watch right now. But with Ryan Wingo, my crystal ball is on Texas, but Missouri continues to make me nervous about that prediction.
All right, let's quickly turn to 2025, where 2 of the top 3 prospects visiting Georgia this past weekend. The number 1 player and offensive tackle David Sanders, and then the number 1 wide receiver in Alabama commit Ryan Williams. So what are you hearing out of that visit?
Well, Georgia already has the number one class in 2025. They have the number one class in 2024. They have the number one football team. They haven't lost a game in like 3 years. And they got a chance to win both of these recruitments. Talking to David Sanders' family, his mom, Samantha, she just talked about the way Georgia makes them feel like family. And David Sanders went to the win over Tennessee last year, returned in the spring, returned in the summer. Now back for this game. They're starting to get a great feel for all the little game day traditions that they love in Athens. They certainly have a great relationship with Coach Searles and Coach Kirby Smart. And there were a lot of recruits on campus, but they continue to show David Sanders a lot of love. They got to spend a lot of time there. Loved the dog walk. Just called the visit truly electrifying. And this is obviously a major front runner in this recruitment alongside the likes of Clemson, Michigan, North Carolina, Tennessee, some of the other contenders for David Sanders, Alabama. But Georgia, there's been times where I thought they've led. It was another great visit. And then Ryan Williams committed to Alabama, but Georgia's a program he's been to several times. He loves the staff, so that was a big reason why he came back. And then you just talked about the development that they've had from the start of the season to now. He just really likes not only the holistic development that the program has, but he's seen it week to week as this team makes adjustments from game to game. He's paying close attention. Saw them erupt for nearly 400 yards passing against a really good Kentucky team. That was right on schedule for Georgia as they hosted Ryan Williams and David Sanders for this one.
Steve, you asked for the thumbs up, you asked for the likes, and now we've got a question. We've got a question for you from the viewers. Tyler and a few others have been asking in the chat about four-star offensive lineman Jordan Seaton, the latest on him after his official visit to Florida this weekend.
Well, he's always been super high on Florida. He was excited to get back. He told me the highlight where being around the players and the fan base that everybody showed him so much love. And then just the message from Coach Napier as they try and rebuild this thing, that they need him and they want him. And there's an opportunity for him to come in and make an instant impact and be a left tackle there, which is important to him. And he likes the two offensive line coach approach. And then he talked about just Coach Napier being around championship level programs at Alabama and Clemson. He knows what winning football looks like. And he realizes that it's not going to happen overnight at Florida, but spending time with franchise quarterback DJ Lagway, who's having an awesome senior year, another potential riser in the upcoming 24/7 sports recruiting rankings. But Jordan Seaton loved his experience at Florida. Will it be enough to beat out Alabama? He wants to get back to Alabama for the Tennessee game. Ohio State's going to get an official in November. You got Colorado pushing. You got Oregon pushing. Oregon's going to get an official visit. He was at Colorado earlier this fall. There's still a lot of major contenders for Jordan Seaton, but Florida's been just that for much of his process. And this was an official visit that's certainly going to keep him in the running moving forward.
Love it. Steve, thanks so much for being here. You can read more of his work on 247sports.com, and you can catch the past Wiltfong whip-arounds on the 247 Sports YouTube channel. Also, join 220,000 very smart people and hit that subscribe button. He is the Tide's leading tackler, and it's not really close. 12 more than the next guy. He's the only player on the team with multiple interceptions, and he's a freshman. Caleb Downs has been a bright spot in the Tide secondary this season and earned himself the title of Freshman of the Week, per our friend and 247 Sports, Chris Hummer. So here to talk more about it is the man himself. It's National College Football writer Chris Hummer. Chris, we'll hit on your story breaking down the top true freshman of the week, but we've got to start with the aforementioned player, Caleb Downs. He had quite the performance for Alabama in the Tide's win over A&M. Overall, though, how important has he been to a Tide team that, let's say, isn't necessarily doing what they usually do, which is dominating opponents right now?
He's been critical. I mean, Alabama had to go into the transfer portal and take a safety from UAB in May. That's how big of a question mark that secondary was for them. And for Caleb Downs to play the way he has made everything easier for this Tide team. You mentioned earlier he's the Tide's leading tackler. He also leads the team in interceptions. He's playing like one of the best safeties, not only for Alabama, but in the entire country. I believe he is the number 3 safety in the SEC in terms of his PFF grade. He's played his best ball in SEC play. He had a breakout game against Ole Miss. He was awesome against Mississippi State. And then he changed the game against Texas A&M over the weekend. He has lived up to his billing as a 5-star recruit. And I don't cover recruiting day to day, but I still talk to people around the country, and people have been talking for over a year now about the impact Caleb Downs is going to have on the college level. People discussed him as the most ready to play true freshman in the 2023 class, and he's living up to those expectations and doing a lot more.
Oh yeah, you might not cover recruiting on a daily basis, but Blair does, so we'll ask him about it. I mean, Blair, he was the #1 safety in the class, and Chris alluded to it. He was called one of the safest players, which I love kind of the play on words there. But what did you maybe see during his evaluation that led you to believe that what he's doing now is what he was always poised to do at this next level?
The last evaluation opportunity for us was in San Antonio earlier this year at the All-American Bowl, where he spent a whole week competing against some of the best players in the country. And you see it there in that setting, right, where it's best on best, where he's going up against guys that are just as strong as he is, just as fast as he is. But his business-like approach, I think, really stood out to me. He had nearly 36 scholarship offers. He took official visits to Georgia, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Bama. And you always wonder how ready he might be to step on the field right away and make an impact. It's definitely hard to do so at a place like Alabama. But the way he attacks the football field, right? The way he goes in and makes plays, his versatility. He can play strong safety. He can play the nickel. He can play some slot. He can play out wide in certain formations. Everything that he brings to the table has made him a valuable asset for the Alabama Crimson Tide, and it's no surprise to us. We had him #1 among safeties, and this is a player that's going to be making a lot of noise for years to come.
It's for a reason. I mean, especially walking into a place like Alabama. You said Nick Saban, this is a position he coaches very closely, and also, as Chris said, it was a position of need for the Tide. Another player who stood out to you was Clemson defensive tackle Peter Woods, a former 4-star prospect in the 23 cycle. What impressed you most about his play?
Clemson needed him on Saturday. He's played well all year, but they were in a tight game with Wake Forest, and Clemson really couldn't move the ball. And the reason why Clemson won that game is their defensive front. Wake Forest was held to 2.6 yards per carry, and that's a Wake Forest team that has to run the ball to be successful offensively. And it went beyond that. Peter Woods was in the backfield a lot. He had 3 pressures on Saturday from the inside. He's one of those rare interior rushers who can create penetration and also eat up blocks at the same time. He's a really special player, and he's somebody that's been playing at a high level. I know it's pretty easy to overlook a defensive tackle on the inside, but Peter Woods is playing at an outstanding level, and Clemson always seems to have a defensive lineman or two that are going to go on to play in the NFL for a long time, and Peter Woods is certainly that from their 2023 class.
Yeah, he was walking into a good situation with history. As you said, a lot of Clemson defensive linemen are all across the NFL right now. But Blair, we did rank him 59th in the class, so this was somewhat expected. But how does Woods fit right into that Clemson defensive line room, again, with so much great history?
He's super athletic, super quick twitch. He's got the ability to be violent with his hands, and it's difficult for freshmen, especially up front, to be able to match up against players that are 2-3 years older than he is, more mature, stronger players that have already been in a college weight room. But he's no stranger to this. We mentioned it earlier, or we saw it on the screen. He helped Thompson to 4 state titles in Alabama. That means he played as a freshman in 2019 and was doing that against players that are already 3 years older than he is. He's difficult to block. He's got the versatility to play on the inside or on the outside. He can play some pass rush situations. He can really chase the ball carrier on run plays. A player that can do a little bit of everything with his fluidity to apply pressure and get after the quarterback. He's going to continue to make an impact and continue to see the field for Clemson.
I love seeing the high school highlights and the college highlights. Very similar, just different jerseys. Chris, another defender that you liked in Week 6 was Purdue safety Dylan Thieneman. He had 8 tackles in the loss to Iowa, but where was his impact felt in this one?
Everywhere, frankly. He is an eraser for Purdue's defense. You see that interception on the screen right now. What you don't see is him sprinting some 25 yards straight across the field to kind of pull that interception off. He is a center fielder, a true center fielder back there as a free safety, but he also is comfortable playing the box. He leads Purdue with tackles on the season, and he has excellent closing speed. If you go, I wrote an article a couple weeks ago where I looked at Dylan Thieneman a little closer, and he's just somebody who makes plays everywhere. He's a sure tackler. He leads the team with 3 interceptions on the year. He has just been a playmaker all year for a Purdue defense that needs the help in year one under Ryan Walters. I don't know who's playing better this year, Caleb Downs or Dylan Thieneman, but they are two of the best safeties, period, in the country right now. Dylan Thieneman is playing that well.
Whew, that says a lot. Again, Caleb Downs was the number 1 safety in his class. Thieneman is the number 14th player in the state of Indiana, but of course a nice in-state win. So with a new staff at Purdue, Blair, I mean, how important are maintaining those in-state relationships, especially when they lead to guys like Dylan Thieneman?
It's huge because you can continue to sell the program to those in-state recruits. I mean, the state of Indiana is going to be a lifeblood for Ryan Walters and for that staff. They're not going to be able to go from coast to coast like maybe some other blue blood programs to get top tier talent. They have to be able to attack the in-state schools and go after some of these players like Dylan Thieneman who maybe slipped through the cracks, and they go after him. They ended up signing 4 of their top 7 commitments from within the state. And, when you think about him and the impact he's had, he had 2 brothers that played at Purdue. When you go into other recruits' homes and you sell the vision and the trajectory of what this program can be to an in-state prospect and point to what Dylan Thieneman is doing, that's all you need. That you need that example to be able to pitch to recruits and to sell the future of the program and to say, hey, look, you could be what he is for us in a couple years. And then you think about maybe the official visits or other prospects getting on campus and meeting with him and talking about the experience as an in-state player playing for maybe a home state school like Purdue. It's invaluable.
Just makes the pitch a lot easier. You don't have to convince them. You just have to show them. I'm going to be less threatening this time, but if you would please hit that like button, we would be so appreciative of that. Chris, we have one last freshman to spotlight here. NC State wide receiver Kevin Concepcion, 8 catches for 102 yards last week and 2 scores in the 48-41 win over Marshall for the Wolfpack. He leads the team in both receiving yards and touchdowns. What is it that makes him such a great weapon for NC State?
He's just been awesome all year for NC State, and NC State needed him to be. This was an NC State team that entered the year with big question marks at receiver. They actually have 2 true freshmen playing a lot of snaps at receiver this year. But Kevin Concepcion's already the no doubt number 1 target for this team. He had 15 targets against Marshall on Saturday, which led the team by, I think, 10. And on the season, he has 50 targets already. No other NC State receiver has more than 23, I believe. So he has emerged as both a favorite for Brennan Armstrong, who is now on the bench, and very quickly for MJ Morris, who threw at him early and often on Saturday. And he's just a playmaker. He's somebody who can work inside and outside. He mostly plays inside for NC State. He is a prototypical slot receiver, and he's made plays in the open field. He's got a ton of yards after catch this year. He is exactly what NC State needed at that position, and he looks like he's going to be a playmaker for the Wolfpack for a long time.
Yeah, Blair, another in-state win here and another 3-star prospect. So why do you think that maybe some freshmen are able to come in early and make an impact despite not maybe being one of the top guys at his position coming out of high school?
It's all about stylistic fit. You mentioned, Chris, the 50 targets. I don't know if there's a true freshman that would have thought about that heading into college and wondered, how many times are going to throw me the ball through the first month of the season? I think this is what we're going to see. This is a trend in the NIL era, is maybe a recruit that could go to a higher ranked school or a school that maybe is known to develop players or kind of a bigger name program, but instead they can go to an NC State and be the top playmaker and be the face of that offense, and then potentially, depending on how the chips fall, you could always in a way find yourself in a different situation. We saw that with Dorian Singer at USC, who was doing some amazing things at Arizona. They lose him. He transfers, heads on over, and is now one of the best weapons for Caleb Williams. I think this is what's going to start to happen now in recruiting when some of these schools like the Ohio States, like the Florida States, like the Alabamas are stocking up at certain positions. Players like Kevin Concepcion can go to maybe a smaller school, really showcase themselves under the spotlight and continue to blow up and potentially move up in kind of their own sense.
Definitely a lot of opportunity, but for him himself, it takes a lot of trust to get that many targets. And speaking of trust, we always trust you, Chris, to bring us the goods. Thank you so much for being on the show. You can check that full article online at 247sports.com. And he does this every week, so be sure to check back in weekly to find out which freshmen are standing out all across college football.
You know it. time for so long. Yeah, you know it. Been on time for so long.
It's time now to hit our top plays of the weekend, or as I like to sometimes call it. Here is Friday's top 5. Let's start in Texas for number 5. Westfield High School hosting Nimitz. 3-star Taj Atkins gets the handoff around the 50, finds a hole, and then makes another one. Yeah, he hurdled a defender. It takes a pack of defenders to finally take him down. But Blair, we have him listed at 5'7". He's got ups.
We love a good hurdle here on the College Football Recruiting Show, and this is one of the best we've seen. Up and over the defender, then runs through another one, a 10 on the degree of difficulty.
I love the confidence it takes to just say, you know what, I'm not going to go around. I'm going to go over. Westfield wins at 42-28. Louisiana is home to our number 4 play. That's Juwan Johnson, LSU commit, and Lafayette Christian Academy quarterback, just messing with defenders here. And the fact that he doesn't get taken down, they're not going to get to him. He's still then able to hit a receiver downfield. Blair, how impressive is that?
So creative, so elusive. The pump fake, the sudden stops. He goes left, he goes right, he goes below. Then he shows off the arm talent, rolling to his right with a dart to the sideline. Terrific play there from Juwan Johnson.
It's when he stands up perfectly straight. Just disrespectful. I mean, that is just amazing. All right, let's go to number 3. A 2-point manual out of Louisville on offense here. And Elijah Creech, playing quarterback, he buys some time and hits 2024 running back Zeke Washburn in the corner of the end zone. Now watch the second play here, Blair, because what happens afterwards explains to you. This was the walk-off game winner. So they topped their rival St. Xavier by 1 point here.
Yeah, he knows he's about to get hit, and he makes sure he gets his feet in bounds. Great awareness, paid off in a big way. And then they've got to go up the hill there to celebrate with the fans.
Worth it, though. Back to Texas for our number 2 play. Dripping Springs quarterback Maddox Mayer connects with Kyle Cooch, the one-hander. Apparently, they call him Cookie Monster. Now, I definitely see the monster here, Blair.
Well, you know where they keep the cookies, right? On the top shelf. Look what he's doing there. With one hand, he says, "Give me that cookie. I want some. I'm the monster."
I love it. Dripping Springs tops Atkins 48-0. And our number 1 play out of South Jersey, Washington Township's Cole Aquino with a desperation heave. Watch this. It's actually batted down and then caught by Deshaun Long, and that was also a game winner, Blair.
They teach defensive backs to bat the ball down, and the secondary almost managed to do that. Amazing effort from Long to follow through on the play and get to the right spot. I feel bad for 25 over there. He made the play, but not quite enough.
Oh, yeah, they're all holding their helmets. It's a tough one. Final 27-25, Washington Township over Winslow. Hey, do you have a play that you think is worthy of being on our top plays? Well, you can submit it using the hashtag 247 top plays. You can use it on X and Facebook.
This guy is a blur on tape. He zigs and zags.
He's a player to potentially make an impact from day one.
All right, our recruit of the weekend is Benedict Ume. The 4-star defensive lineman is committed to Stanford, but for the last few months, football has really been secondary. Ume has been privately battling cancer, but yesterday he rang the bell announcing his final day of chemotherapy. Now, Ume is having to miss his senior season, but said, quote, "After 12 weeks in and out of hospitals, I can finally say I am ready to get back to the grind." What an incredible moment for he and his family, Blair.
Yeah, Ume received the news in the spring, and he's been battling this silently for a few months. Stanford honored his commitment, knowing all of this information, so hats off to them. And obviously, we send our best over to top 24/7 defensive lineman Benedict Ume as he gets back to the grind.
Cannot wait to see him back out on a football field. All right, we have an honorable mention here. Demarion Bothwell, better known as Fluff Bothwell, had himself a day. The 3-star running back from Oneota, Alabama, rushed for 265 yards and 4 touchdowns. He then caught 4 passes for 122 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. But wait, there's more. He also threw a touchdown pass. So for those counting at home, that's 8 touchdowns on offense. Oh no! He also plays on defense. He added 17 tackles and a sack. Blair, that's an incredible stat line.
Nothing fluffy about that Ironman performance. You mentioned a lot of big numbers there. I'm hoping the magic number was 1, as in the number of ice baths he needed after that impressive night of football.
Blair, I don't know what you need, but that was fantastic analysis. Nothing fluffy about that performance. Congratulations to our players of the weekend and our top plays. Thank you so much for joining us. For Blair Angulo, I am Emily Proud, and this is the College Football Recruiting Show.